I now have the pleasure of leading a conversation with three accomplished individuals. Please welcome to the stage our first panelist and the Chief Executive Officer of NYC Outward Bound Schools, Vanessa Rodriguez. I'm honored to welcome our next panelist and this year's Expeditioners Award recipient, LaRue R. Gibson, Managing Director and Partner for LRG Wealth Advisors. And finally, please join me in welcoming this year's Educational Leadership Award recipient, the Honorable Adrian E. Adams, Speaker of the New York City Council. Thank you all for joining us. For this conversation, I would like to use a format our educators use in our schools to help students debrief and reflect on their experiences. It's called Mirror, Microscope, Binoculars. Each of these metaphorical items asks you to consider your experience from a different angle. Mirror for reflection, microscope for zeroing in on the experience, and binoculars for looking at the bigger picture with an eye on the future. So we'd like to begin by having the speaker be our mirror. Speaker Adams, as a dedicated public servant, can you reflect on why you spent so many years working to improve conditions for young people in New York City and advocating for educational organizations like ours?
Wow, that's a big question. First of all, just let me express how proud I am of you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.
Parents, my goodness. Yeah. I am so proud of you, but I think most of all because you're from Southeast Queens, just saying. You know, it's an honor to be here. Let's say this first, and it's such an honor for me to be among these amazing recipients tonight. Congratulations to my fellow honorees as well. And thank you for the honor tonight. I've got to shout out my predecessor, still my speaker, Gifford Miller, heart of hearts. You know, my walk in this journey has been full of many steps. And I've been saying over the past couple of weeks, oh, when I write my book, what a story to tell, because I have lived many lives. But what I want to share, I guess, you know, in looking at the totality of your question, I love education. And I've always considered myself a kind of lay educator, if you will. I have a degree in psychology from Spelman College, but I minored in early childhood education. So even on the campus of Spelman College, there was a daycare center. And for those of you that ever went through the work-study program, I did. I didn't have a full ride. So, but I said all that to say, you know, the many steps that I took throughout college and then coming home from college, I worked in daycare. I worked with children in the steps of education. And then during my first year in college, I had an amazing role model who was a psychology professor. And when I graduated, my intention was to teach psychology on the collegiate level to college freshmen. So guess what I never did? Yeah, that. I never did that. What I did instead was I became a flight attendant. And I found my wings, so to speak. But post that, the whole experience in education, one tends to realize when we reflect, is everything that we do whenever we put one foot in front of the other and advance ourselves, we are advancing ourselves through the medium of education. Even when we are not conscious of that, we are still moving and we are still learning in everything that we do. So my entree into public service was in my local community board, Community Board 12, which is the second largest community board in Queens. And I was appointed to become education chair, of all things. I started taking a look at the educational districts in Southeast Queens, and I realized that there was a tremendous difference in the provision of our students across the city of New York. And I realized something that hit me like a ton of bricks. Everything's not equal in the world of education in New York. And I became a champion for those students. We had a high school that didn't even have a library. How do you have a high school that is supposed to be dedicated to the education of our children, trying to become what you are trying to become at Columbia? But the high school didn't have a library. And so the community board had to fight to have a library truck, and I became a trustee for the Queens Public Library System. So I did that for a while also. So in realizing that this journey was not just about public service and community, again, it was in that trail of education and how am I to teach? Because truly that still is the heart of what I do. It is teaching. For those that don't know, it's been an interesting journey, over the past year in, being the first mother, grandmother, and wife to lead the New York City Council and leading a woman majority council. And in that whole education space, GIF, and you and I talked about this about a year ago and talked about what if this happens? What if this speakership thing happens? And it did. And what did I pull from? I pulled from my experience as an educator. And I still do that in the grand sphere of things in leading, again, this unique city council, who happens to lead and have the most diverse leaders in the council also ever. But I pulled that experience in education with me. So I don't want to take up a whole lot of time, but I did want to share that with you, is that the heart of everything that I am came from and still comes from education, because I always wanted to be, and in some respects, have turned out to be that psychology professor teaching those freshmen in college.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Speaker Adams. Next, we'd like to invite LaRue Gibson to take a look into our microscope. As a board member for over 30 years, you've seen NYC Outward-Bound Schools change and adapt to the needs of its schools. Can you share with us some highlights from your experience as a board member and why you have remained committed to this work for so many years?
I'd be happy to. The real answer is just Gifford Miller. No. I joined this board as a younger man, wanting to learn how to help young people, students, do better, because education was so important to me. And a fierce woman who was on the board, Rochelle Evans, really, really encouraged me to get involved, come to board meetings, come to events. And it was my first exposure to something called social and emotional learning, which at the time, that's not what people called it. But it was an extremely supportive environment for young people in New York City schools that really moved me and got me excited. As I got more involved, I started to learn that there was a significant difference in the way that I was educated. So my parents were stalwart believers in an important education. They were supportive. They were dogged. They were tough. And everything that I am today is because of their hard work and support in trying to get me to understand how important education was. But suffice to say, social and emotional learning was not part of how I grew up. So when I got involved, at the time it was called New York City Outward Bound, we were involved in something called experiential learning, expeditionary learning, learning by doing. And as a student who was in the sciences, engineering, lab was something that I was really, really aware of and remembered, and it really helped to understand the work that you were doing in classroom. And so experiential learning really spoke to me, and it started my path on this long journey. Then at some point we decided to get involved directly with schools. And we begun to understand that the way to really help as many young people in New York City was to run schools with the help of the Gates Foundation and a supportive administration. We were able to start and get involved in a bunch of schools, and I think the number now is 14 that we're directly involved with, where we're able to help teach this pedagogy of expeditionary learning, experiential learning, but really more importantly, social and emotional learning. And that has driven me, and the work is really, really difficult, but as most of you know who know Outward Bound, the motto is to serve, to strive, and not to yield. And so that has really kept me going. And, I always think about our chief, President Emeritus, Richard Stoppel, used to always say when we'd have discussions about various programs that we were doing, what does this have to do with students? And what I realize and what keeps me going all of these years has been that what we do is all about the future. I mean, you're our future. And whatever future I have is dependent on how well you're educated and how well you do. And we're trying to create an environment where students feel included, they feel emotionally strong, they build great character, and we provide an environment of great rigor so they're prepared for the careers of tomorrow. So that's my story.
Thank you, LaRue. To wrap up our conversation, I would like to invite our Chief Executive Officer, Vanessa Rodriguez, who has 3 decades of experience in public education, to look through the binoculars and provide us with the big picture. NYC Outward Bound Schools just developed a new 3-year strategic plan. Looking ahead, what excites you the most about this plan?
Thank you for the question, Lickman. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Before I answer that, I want to thank the speaker for everything you do for New York City Public Schools. Thank you, and thank you, LaRue. Thank you, LaRue, for your continuous support and commitment to NYC Outward Bound Schools. We're grateful for both of you. Great. So what excites me about where we're heading? There are a lot of things that excite me. Most, I think it's that we're grounding our new plan in the next 3 years in the strengths of our organization. As LaRue said, there are a lot of focus that we have here around social and emotional learning, but also social and emotional academic development, SEED. When I think about the work that we're gonna do over the next 3 years, there's 3 words that come to mind: innovation, equity, and impact. That's the focus that we have. We're grounding our work, yes, in social and emotional learning, but we're grounding it in social, emotional, academic development, SEED, which is really the integration. We've grown and built off of the social and emotional learning work we've done, and we have learned that when you integrate social and emotional and academic development, young people thrive. And our goal is to continue to develop on that. We know that the research shows that when young people are engrossed in social and emotional and academic development, that their ability to make progress and to academically achieve is at a higher rate. And so our strategic plan is focused on really developing an opportunity for young people to strive, not just in their academic work, but also in building connection, building on their ability to connect with young people across different lines of understanding, experiences. And so our work is to continue to partner with New York City public schools. Currently, we partner with 14 of our network schools, but we also partner with 70 public schools across all 5 boroughs. We reach over 26,000 students on an annual basis. And we're We know that the program we have works. We know that the work we're doing to support our young people like Lukman and Amelie and our other students who are here tonight is working. As Amelie mentioned, 11% of our students are achieving and are graduating at higher rates. Particularly, I'm proud of the fact that our graduates our graduation rates for Black and Latinx students across the city are exceeding citywide percentages for all students. We're above. Our students are achieving at, our Black and Latinx students are outperforming by 7 and 6% percentage points in terms of their graduation rates. Across all students in the city. And so we know that our programs work. We know that we're having an impact and that we're preparing our young people for the future. And our strategic plan is going to go deeper into providing that social and emotional and academic development and support for young people. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited that we're going to be able to double down on the strengths of our organization, double down on the work we're doing in crew advisory, in coaching educators, and also in really supporting our young people and having access to the outdoors where they're experiencing things that they've never experienced before and translating that back into the classroom. Our goal is to ensure that our young people are prepared to not just thrive in high school, but to also be able to take the skills that we give them and thrive in college and career and live fulfilling lives. And we know that what we're doing works. The outcomes are there. We're going to build on that over the next 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Please, another round of applause for our panelists and tonight's terrific honorees.